Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. So behind me we have a 2014 Jeep Sahara Unlimited, and this truck is in here today because we have a transmission oil pan leak. The trans pan has rusted, so we are going to go ahead and replace that today. Now before we go ahead and begin, guys, if you guys haven't subscribed to the channel, hit the subscribe button down below and smash that like button because it definitely helps the channel out. So with that said, let's go ahead and begin on today's repairs. So we are looking at our transmission pan. You will notice that there's a bunch of oil leaking. You can see right here. Now these Jeep transmissions on this particular model are a NAG 1 unit. It's a Mercedes transmission. This is very common on them. They painted the oil pan. This coating basically cracks. It's kind of a hard plastic coating. It'll keep water in there and you'll start getting little leaks like this one has. I'll move you a little closer in here and you can see that, you know, everything is pretty much rotted away, and that's why we're leaking oil. Now to get to this transmission oil pan, to be able to remove it on these Jeeps is kind of a nuisance. You're supposed to remove the cross member and everything to gain good clear access. I'm going to try to do this a little bit differently in this video. Now my main way of doing this is going to be to remove this little brace here, and I'm going to put a jack on my transfer case, and then we're going to unbolt the transmission from this cross member and try to raise it up and see if we can make a little bit of room. So we're going to go ahead and remove this brace. It's these two forward bolts. And then we have these rear bolts here, guys. There's two of them as well. Now you want to be careful because if you guys notice right there, this thing started falling down. What I'm going to do is actually go ahead and just push it to the side like that. I don't want to go ahead and just drop it all completely. Now that we have that out of the way, we can take our transmission jack or jack stand here, which is basically a screw style jack, and we're going to place it on our transfer case. Let me go ahead and get this set up and I'll be right back. I've gone ahead and I set up my screw jack here. I went ahead and put a block of wood just because you don't want to have metal to metal contact when you're holding weight up. And now that that is out of the way, we are going to be removing this front brace out of our way here. What you're going to have to do is, if you come up along here, there's going to be one bolt on each side of the frame, and then you have the center bolt. So we're going to go ahead and take this off. We got our front brace removed here, so now we have a little bit more room. Now you can do this one of two ways. You can remove this cross member if you'd like. The reason why I'm not removing the cross member on this is because it's actually bolted up to our fuel tank holder, and in order to remove the fuel tank holder bolts out of it and get this out of there, it's gonna require some work where you may have to possibly tilt the tank. I just don't want to get involved with all that, guys. It's a little bit too much work. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and take off. There's 3 bolts in the cross member. You can see there's some cutouts here, and there's a couple 16mm bolts. I believe it's 3 of them, and we're going to go ahead and take those off to be able to lift up on our transmission from our cross member. Now that I got the 3 nuts holding the transmission mount to the cross member, what I'm going to do is go ahead and lift up on my transmission. I've gone ahead and I jacked up my transmission, guys. You get a couple inches when you do it this way. You just got to make sure you're very careful, support the transmission correctly. And the reason why all of this is needed, you will see right back here, we have a transmission bolt in that corner, and then we have another transmission bolt up here in this corner. What we did was we raised the transmission, and it just gives us a little bit of room so we can get our ratchet in there and be able to remove those rear bolts. I'm gonna go ahead and get my oil catch pan and get a few other tools that I'm gonna need, and the next step is going to be to remove this trans pan. Now that we have everything in position, I went ahead and I got my oil drain underneath it, and I got my tool that I'm going to be using for the rear bolts. These rear bolts, there's not a lot of room for you to get a regular T30 in there. So I use this special little tool that I have. It's a little driver tool. It's set up with a T30 Torx, which is what these bolts are. And what I'm gonna do is sneak in here, get it in there, guys. And you gotta kind of come in from behind. I don't know if you guys can see my arm, and I'm holding up my tool. And with my other hand, what I'm gonna do is go ahead and start working this off. Now, once you break these free, they usually come off pretty easily. This one right now, I believe, is fairly loose because it's moving nice and easy. Now that I know that one is loose, what I'm gonna do is come here on the other side. Now this side is a little bit more challenging, and I apologize if I'm blocking the camera view, but what I'm gonna do is go ahead and sneak in here, line up this tool, and all right, so we were able to break this one loose as well. I always start off with these rear ones, especially if you're not removing the cross member, simply because the oil pan is going to be held up, guys, and you're not gonna be getting fluid leaking out. If you were to remove the front ones first and then the center ones, you'll find that you're gonna be in a little bit of trouble because the oil pan's gonna wanna be at an angle. There's not gonna be much support on it, and you're not gonna be able to remove these bolts easily because the added weight of the oil pan being on an angle is going to, create a lot of stress load. So make sure you remove these rear bolts first, especially if you're going to be doing it the way I'm doing it. Now this is an example of what we took off. It's basically the bolt and a little holder. I'll show you guys a little bit more in depth on these in a little bit, because these are not a traditional bolt, guys. There is a little holder that you're supposed to have on there to keep the oil pan up, because there's no regular bolts on the oil pan. So now I'm gonna work off this last side here. Hopefully I can get this off fairly easy, but you can see the gist here. It's basically remove these rear bolts first. Now I got my long T30, and I'm gonna remove my forward bolts here. These are the ones that I like to remove first. I'm gonna kind of block the camera here for a second, guys, and we're going to get our other forward bolt. Now these didn't release with the holder. They're still on there, so I gotta get something to release those. Since I'm too lazy to go and get a hammer, I'm just going to use my ratchet here as a hammer. Just give it a little bit of a tap. Now those things are seized in there, so that's gonna be a little bit of a fight. You wanna keep track of your bolts. I'm not sure if these are going to be varying lengths, but I guess I could check. Actually, no, I believe they're all gonna be the same style bolt, guys. They're gonna be the same length. And the thing with this is, if you guys do this, you're going to have to replace these bolts. I do believe they are torque to yield. Now what I'm gonna do for this passenger side one is there's a 10mm bolt here with this little bracket. And we're going to have to take this off. What this bracket is basically hiding here is the transmission plug. And what I'm gonna do is go ahead and just kind of move that to the side. And we got our right side holder out of there. This left side one is giving me a little bit of an issue. I'm gonna grab my hammer and actually tap it off, and I'll be right back with you guys. I'm back with a baby hammer, guys, and we're just gonna tap this a little. Sometimes these will be stuck on here, especially if the oil pan is rotted away. They will be a little difficult. Now this one is loose. It just took a little bit of rocking back and forth, and we were able to get it off. And we're gonna go ahead and place this to the side. And the only thing that is left now are going to be our center ones. This is where you wanna be careful, because this is where the transmission fluid will start dripping. So you're not gonna wanna take these out fully 100%. You're gonna wanna crack them loose and let the oil drain. Now I haven't drained any oil or suctioned anything off of here, so this may make a mess. Be very careful. I'm trying to remove our bolt here. And this one has so much crud in it, it's actually fighting me, guys. Yep, that one's going to be a tough one. She is crudded up, and not wanting to open up. So let me try this center one here as well. All right, so for some reason these are being a little more difficult, so let me switch my bit here, because when you have a long bit sometimes you lose a little bit of torque. All right, so just what I didn't want to happen happened. They did break off in there, so we're gonna have to extract that one. This is not fun, guys, especially when this happens. We will be able to get it out, but it's gonna be a little bit more of a fight, so this video got a little bit more interesting. What I'm gonna do is go ahead and take this one off, see if we can get this one to come off. Hopefully this one doesn't break, but you know, if it does, we're just gonna have to deal with it, I guess. So I'm gonna have to switch up some methods here, because this one's being a little difficult. So guys, using my ratchet, trying to get this off, we had the same incident. So we have two center holes, or center bolts, I guess you could say, that are broken off. This is going to be a fun repair, because now it's basically changed the game, because now we are going to have to extract bolts. Luckily the heads broke off, so we do have some room to be able to get them off. What I'm going to be doing next is I got to remove these center holders. So what I'm going to try to do is tap them out. There's going to be some rust that are holding these in place. I'm going to have to tap them off, and I'm going to have to give you guys an explanation on the bench, just to show you kind of what happened and how this all works together, because it's going to be very difficult showing it up in that corner on the transmission. All right, guys, so in the last clip you saw that these bolt heads broke. Well, you primarily saw the passenger side one when it broke, and the other one broke off camera. Now these are the little holders that are holding it up in the middle. When the bolt broke, I don't know how well the camera's gonna pick it up, but you'll see there's a lot of rust and crust in there holding this together. So my whole method with this, and I figured I'd show you this, is you'll notice that mark on there. What I did was I used my air hammer, not on the transmission, but on this little finger that holds it into place, and I put my air hammer on here, and I gave it a couple light taps, just a couple quick hits, like broop, 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 just kind of blasted it on there. And what that did was it broke off all the rust that was in the hole, and it let this slide down from the actual stud, or the other half of the bolt that's broken in there. Now I went ahead and I did the same thing on this side, guys, and before I took it off, or before I take it off I should say, I kind of wanted to just give you guys a visual reference of how I did it. Now you can do this at home even if you don't have an air hammer. It's going to take a chisel and a hammer, but what I did was basically take my air hammer, put it on the actual nub, and then I just tapped it away like this. You know, light hits. We didn't go, you know, too nuts with it, because my fear is if I hit it too hard, I can possibly break the stud off flush, and that's not what I'm trying to do. I was just trying to break apart any of the rust that is holding the bolt in there, which in this case we have quite a bit of. Now that I have that loose and it's moving, what I'm going to do is grab my channel locks here, and we're just going to be very careful. Now the pan released, and there's still quite a bit of oil in this pan, so we're gonna go ahead and let that drain out, and then what I'm gonna do is come back on camera and I'll show you guys how I remove the remainder of that. It appears our pan has stopped dripping as much as it's going to, because I gotta angle it more. Now we should be able to remove our transmission pan quite easily. If you guys aren't able to slide it out, one thing I would say is maybe raise up your transmission a little bit to clear everything, but you should be able to get it off. Now we're gonna go ahead and take off our gasket and just set that to the side, and you will see here that we are left with our little holder. Now it's still being held in there pretty firm, so we're gonna go back to our pliers here, and we're just going to work it off back and forth. I know this can suck, but you know, you just kind of got to make room for it like this, guys, and wiggle it. Now this one's actually being a little bit more stubborn than the other one, so some penetrating oil wouldn't hurt it. Let's go ahead and give it a spray. I'm gonna go ahead and give this a little bit of time but you guys kind of get the gist of how these come off now. This is the main point that I wanted to show you. Once you get it loose and you get that rust out of there, I'm just going to continue to work it back and forth and move this along until I'm able to get that fully off the trans, and then we're going to have an exposed stud, and I'll show you guys how we remove that here in a bit. All right guys, so we're back here and I'm going to show you something that just happened that I'm actually very fortunate for. Makes my life a lot easier. I was trying to move this back and forth and I noticed that it only wanted to spin. So if you go ahead and spin this off, you'll notice that this came off with the threading and everything on our holder, which is amazing news for me, because now I only have to extract one bolt out of the transmission and then get this out of this holder, or if this holder is too far gone, I might just opt to call the dealer and get, you know, new holders for this vehicle. But right now that is actually great news. So we only have one stud, and that's on this side, that is going to be fighting us, that we're going to have to remove. And what I'm going to do is set up my camera on there, get all of my equipment on that side, and I'll show you guys how we extract this. So we are looking at our stud that is stuck on here, guys. Now this is going to be a little bit of an easy process. It just really depends on how it wants to challenge us. What I like to do on these is I take my little torch. This is just a little handheld, and what I'm going to do is go ahead and apply some heat to it. Just about a minute or so worth of heat I find usually works on these. Now you don't want to bring out your big torch or anything really nuts with this, because it's a transmission, guys, so you want to have the least invasive way of getting in here. I normally hold it on there just to build up a little bit of heat, and I can see the transmission fluid that is on there is starting to boil up, which tells me it's pretty hot. And what I'm going to do next is take my little stud extractor tool. Basically, stud goes in there and you can use this to spin them off. And we're going to go ahead and go flush with it. Now I have to kind of go around the camera here. All right, looks like we bit into it. And let's just keep spinning this off. And I believe we got it, guys. And this one came out pretty easy. If that is the case, let's see if it's going to come off all the way. And it did. So we actually got very lucky. Now let me make sure this isn't hot, and it's not, but that is our stud right there that broke off. So we have no strip threads from what I could see on here. Everything looks good. So this is a great thing, guys. We definitely got saved on this one. Sometimes I find that these don't want to come off. Now the transmission is aluminum. So sometimes it doesn't really build up that bad on them. What typically builds up is just the little areas here that the holders go into, because there's no threading or anything. So just like anything that goes through something, if you get a little bit of water in there, it'll cause some sort of corrosion and cause it to basically be difficult to come out. But we got lucky. I'm very happy this came off. So we should be good from this point on. With everything removed out of our way, guys, next thing is going to be to go ahead and take your transmission filter and go ahead and pop it off. Now sometimes you may get some fluid coming out of here, sometimes you don't. Just, you know, be very careful with it, and make sure when it comes off that you get your little O-ring that is attached onto your filter here. Sometimes they can get stuck up here, so just a little bit of word of the wise, make sure that comes off. Once we get that off, what I like to do, or what I normally do, is I just let them drain for a little bit. Now this one's not really draining anything. It's just, you know, kind of leaking out a little bit, dripping. I'm gonna give it a few minutes, let it drip out, and then we're gonna hit it with some brake cleaner to try to get out the majority of the fluid, and then we're gonna go and start reassembling everything. It's been dripping for a while, guys, so we're just gonna take some brake cleaner and we're going to clean off a majority of the fluid that's on here. We're not looking to clean it up 100% and make it perfect. I just use this to get off as much dirt from the bottom of this valve body. It's a pretty safe method. I don't know, a lot of people may say no, you shouldn't use any cleaner or anything, but if you got any sediment down here, this is the best way to remove it. This stuff won't hurt the trans, especially if you're not forcing it into any ports. As you guys will see, I'm just generally spraying it from a good distance, And you can already see we got a lot of dirt and debris off of the valve body. And this transmission, you don't really have to worry so much of the oil getting on your sealing area because it uses a gasket that's actually really sturdy. So you don't have to worry about anything of that nature. What I do like to do is get in my bolt holes here and spray them off where our transmission bolts the pan up to the body. As you guys saw, these bolts here in the center gave me a nice fight. So I like cleaning off the little areas where we have our bolts that go in there, just in case there's any rust or corrosion. Now I'm gonna let this drip a little bit further and repeat this process again if more transmission fluid starts pooling up here. And then we're gonna come back, reinstall our filter, and do the next step on this. Now that our transmission has been dripping for a little bit, we are ready to do some reassembly here. One thing that I do like to do is go ahead and just clean off your mating areas. I just use a microfiber towel, shop towel. You just want to get off any dirt or debris, guys, and go around the perimeter. It can be a little bit difficult here towards the back. Now, one thing that I will mention is that you do not have to grind off anything on the surface here. Do not take a cleaner or some sort of die grinder to these mating surfaces unless you have some crazy corrosion, which I'll be honest with you, I've never really seen happen on these transes. Now you'll notice that up here in this corner, you have a little bit of corrosion, but that's actually on the outside. The inner side is nice and clean. Even here, there's some corrosion by the bolt hole area, but nothing extreme. As long as it doesn't raise itself on there, that's just a little bit of staining. So you do not want to take a grinder wheel or anything to clean this because the gasket is kind of a double O-ring kind of a design. It's a rubber gasket that has two ridges that'll basically seal up on the surface. If you take away any material, that gasket's not going to be able to stay on there and hold it up. And these transmission bolts are very fragile, guys. They are one-time use, so you definitely want to make sure you're not cranking on them too much if you take off material, because that'll just wind up snapping the bolt and then you're gonna have to extract it like we did on these two center ones. So definitely save yourself the headache and don't go through that, especially if you don't have to. I'm gonna go ahead and grab my transmission filter now. We are going to reinstall that, and we are going to get our new pan prep for installation. And I'll show you guys a little trick that I like to do on these pans, so that way we don't run into any issues in the future with this rotting out. Next thing that we're gonna do, guys, is go ahead and take your new transmission filter. Now what I like to do is take a little bit of the old oil and go ahead and put it on the O-ring. And if you brake clean, make sure you put a little bit of lubrication where the oil filter will slide into. All you're supposed to do on these is just go ahead and push up on it and it'll basically hold itself in there. It has a self-locating tab on here as well, so just make sure that that goes into place. Typically they don't pop into place or anything like the older style filters. These just firmly press into it. So be mindful of that. Don't try to hit it and jam it up. I've seen people trying to force them up there and wind up cracking the neck. These are made out of plastic, so be very careful with them. Next thing we're gonna do is go ahead and get our gasket onto our pan and transfer over our magnet from our old pan to our new one. And we will go ahead and throw the pan on this next. So we are at our bench, guys. We have our new oil pan, which has a nice upgrade. This one has an actual drain plug on there. So it's actually a really nice thing, guys. You guys will see right there. Sorry, the camera wasn't in focus. This one has a drain plug. Now, what we're gonna do is go ahead and take our magnet. We already cleaned it off. This was in our old oil pan, guys, and it sits right here. It's there to pick up any dirt, debris, or anything. So make sure you clean it off very well. Now this pan uses a gasket, so this is actually the best part of this. It's so easy. It only goes on one way. All you're supposed to do is go ahead and line it up. Now this gasket did come in a bag. They had to kind of curl it over. That's why it wants to be a little finicky. But all you're supposed to do here is line it up just like so. And it's honestly one of the easier gaskets on a transmission, guys. The only thing easier than this gasket would be the Ford ones that have like a double O-ring reinforced metal gasket. Those are pretty simple, but as you guys can see, these are very easy. Our gasket is installed. Now, along with us getting the new bolts for this transmission, I also went ahead and I got us the new holding fingers. 5 of these that I took off were in pretty bad shape, so I went ahead and I ordered 5 of them. I got 6 bolts. The other style holder, that's the bigger one for the passenger side front, on ours was in good shape, so we didn't need to purchase that one as well. So, you know, we got everything that we need here. It's ready to go. Next step is to go ahead and bolt up our pan to our transmission. So that's the next step in this. So we are at our transmission. Our filters are already installed. We have our oil pan and gasket and everything ready to go, guys. What we're gonna do is go ahead and slide this in here very carefully. Now, taking it off, it comes out a lot easier, but going on, you just gotta be a little careful. I'm gonna try to get my transmission to go up a little more here on my jack, just to try to get a little bit of more clearance. And I'm being very careful not to make sure that my gasket here is coming off. So we got it slid where we need to. What I'm gonna do now is just make sure that my gasket stayed in place. It does, but can never be too safe, guys. I'd rather be safe than sorry. That's just kind of how I've always been. Now that our transmission pan is pretty much into place, what we're gonna do is take one of our new holders or fingers, whatever you want to call these. I don't really know the technical name. And what we're gonna do is run our new bolt through it. So you guys should see something like this. Now that we have our holders ready, guys, it's gonna be quite simple. What we're gonna do is go ahead and line up our transmission pan. Make sure that everything is nice and lined up and perfect. And right here in the middle, we are going to start bolting up our holders. You always start off in the middle on these. I find it gives you the best range of holding it up there. You just point the finger portion towards the pan and then, you know, start screwing it up there. Give it a couple turns by hand. And you can see once you put the middle on there, your pan is pretty much firmly held in place. The reason why I always do the center is because it holds it a lot better. Otherwise, there's no real technique to it except that it's centered. And we are going to take our other holders here, and you guys can see we just line it up on the pan, and then we give it a couple threads. Now, all of these little fingers are going to be the same, except for the one on the passenger corner. That one will be different, guys. We do have a new bolt for that, but we didn't get a new one because this one actually came off pretty good. Didn't fight me on it or anything, so this one was good to go. We're just going to position it into place, and now I will show you too. This one is a lot different as far as the looks because there is a 10mm that gets driven on here to hold this little plate for the plug connector. That's why this one is a little bit different when it comes to how it looks. We're just going to take that, run our new bolt through it, and make sure we can get a couple threads on it. Now that one, for some reason, seems a little bit tight. Maybe because my gloves are slipping, so we're gonna take our T30 and again, hand threading it just to make sure. And one key takeaway from this, guys, these are very low torque. These take about 70 inch-pounds. It's not a lot. You definitely don't want to overdo it and break them. Now, the more challenging ones that you're gonna face on here is going to be these back ones. Trying to find the correct angle to get in here, guys, and to be able to view seems to be the more difficult portion of it. Now I'm gonna try to do this on camera, although these things kind of suck. Sometimes you'll spend like 10-15 minutes getting the back ones lined up here, mainly because I can't see. So let me see here. Let me get my holder into place. And then from my holder, try to line it up. And this one is the easier one. Hopefully this one can thread on there. Now, same thing like the front one there, guys. It didn't really want to thread in. It got me fairly close, but it only spun about a half a turn. So I'm gonna have to take my T30 Torx that I have on my small tool that we use to remove these back ones. And we're going to go ahead and hand thread that a couple threads just like this. And that worked out pretty good. Now we got to do this side. This is another challenging side here. This one has actually less room than the one that we just did. So you want to come up behind it and position it here. And do the same thing, guys. Always start off hand threading it. Now, this one is a little bit of an awkward position. Let me see if I can get it to hand thread. It's all about hand threading. Don't do this any other way. If you do, you can wind up stripping them, guys. Trust me, I've broken my fair share of these. When I used to work at Mercedes and we used to service these transmissions. These transmissions wasn't uncommon to break these, especially if you weren't paying attention. And it's no different in this Jeep because same exact setup, nothing really changed. So now that we have everything bolted up and hand threaded, what I'm going to do, and you got to be very careful with this, guys, is use an impact gun, or you can use a hand ratchet. I'm using my gun here, and I'm just going to use it to drive these bolts in. I am not impacting whatsoever. Just making sure here not to strip on my new bolts. So we're just looking to drive it up and settle these into place. These are very low torque. We're actually going to torque these up. These are 70 inch-pounds, guys. Very, very low torque. Nothing extreme here. And I'll show you how I torque them up here. But now what I got to do is get my bottom bolts here, or my back bolts, to pretty much get tightened up or snug them up, because we weren't able to do so. So what I'm going to do, and I'll do it off camera just because it's going to take me a little bit here. I'm going to go ahead and tighten up these back bolts and snug them up because I can't get a power tool in there. Once I tighten up these bolts back here, guys, what I'm going to do is come back and go ahead and torque everything down. I usually don't show me torquing stuff on this channel, but I'm going to actually show you guys this process simply because these take inch-pounds. Now, just to give you guys an idea, this is how small the torque wrench is. That's what inch-pounds are. What I like to do on these is start in the center here. Now, you may find yourself having to, you know, go ahead and torque these a little bit, because as you tighten all of them, they all have different push rates. Now, mine is set to 70 inch-pounds, and you will see that that is not even that much. So right there, that is 70 inch-pounds. It's pretty much like a really good hand tight. However, since these bolts are fragile and they do break, I find that it's a good thing to follow this torque. If you guys only have a foot-pounds torque wrench, the foot-pounds is somewhere around 5 foot-pounds. But I have this torque wrench here. Now, this is not actually made to do this job. This is actually used for TPMS sensors, but I find that I love using it for this because I really don't use it for tire pressure monitoring sensors as much as I thought I would, but it has a secondary use for this, so I find that it's a good thing. Now, if you guys notice that I'm going in a crisscross pattern with this, I just did this corner and now I did the back end, and now we're going to be doing our last two here. Sorry guys, I had to cut the camera off there, but we were torquing this one here next. We're gonna go ahead and torque it, and that is nice and tight. Now this back one, I always dread torquing. Really bad angle, and I find that it gets caught up on the exhaust quite a bit. So let's see, hopefully we don't over torque this one here, because this one is a big one. So there you go guys, we've torqued every single one of them down. It's a very strenuous process, especially because we're doing it with the cross member in place, but you know, it pays to do it this way. It's a lot less work, But as you guys saw, I had no big issue getting in there and taking care of you know, my bolts and everything. So what I'm gonna do next is go ahead and start cleaning up my area here. I'm just gonna use some brake cleaner. Really not gonna film it, guys, because we're gonna do a little bit of extra protection on this pan to keep it from having any issues in the future, and I'll show you guys that in the next clip. With our area cleaned up, I got it as good as I could. Obviously, there's gonna be some areas that might have some drippage, but a majority is clean. I made sure that I extra brake cleaned the pan, made sure there was no oils or anything on it. Next thing that we're gonna do is use some undercoating spray, and we are going to give this a couple coats of undercoating. Now, I'm not trying to go crazy here and just overdo it, guys. I'm just trying to add an extra layer of protection because the old pan pretty much rotted out, and I want to avoid that happening on this one. Now, it's hard to stop the process of salt eroding stuff away, but I find that this is an extra precaution just to do on here. Now, I'm gonna give this a couple coats. I gave it about 5 to 10 minutes in between all of the coats here, and be very good when you do this. Don't just start spraying everything. I'm gonna clean up little areas, like I got a little overspray on the exhaust there. I'm gonna clean stuff like that up, but I like to give it a couple coatings of this undercoating just to make sure that it helps keep as much of the stuff away from the factory coating of the pan, and that way it can you know, last a little bit longer than the original one did. So we have 3 coats of our undercoating spray on our pan, guys. Everything is looking beautiful. We're gonna give that a little bit of time to dry, but while it's drying, as long as we don't touch anything on it, we should be able to install our transmission onto our cross member. So what I'm gonna do now is go ahead and lower our transmission down from the transfer case where we lifted it up here originally, and we're gonna go ahead and drop it into place. Now, these can be a little challenging. What you're gonna have to do is come in here and finagle with the mount a little bit just to get it into its proper place. To give you guys an idea here, I'm gonna try to zoom out on the camera and try to cover all of this because I did a little bit of it right there, but I'm basically just lowering my transfer case down, which will lower my transmission, and then I'm also making sure that our mount is going to line up here on our cross member. There's indentations on the cross member, so it's real easy to figure out where it went. Now I'm gonna go ahead and take our hardware. I had laid it down here and I need a little pile on the floor, and we're going to put our first bolt in, and then if I don't drop everything here, I'm kind of butterfingers today, just been dropping everything down. I'm going to go ahead and pull my 3 bolts into place here. And then what I'm gonna do is go ahead and tighten it. Now what I'm gonna do is make sure my jack here is fully off the transfer case, just in case the transfer case does wanna come down a little bit when I tighten it. And we lost one of our nuts right there. It just fell down, so we'll go ahead and put that back in. I always hand thread them, guys. That one wasn't hand threaded all the way, that's why it fell off. Now that is nice and tight. There's no torque spec on these that I really follow. I just basically gun them on, guys. A lot of you may say, hey, that's not right. It's a hack way to do it. But realistically, the gun will get them up to where they need to be, guys. You don't really have to stress yourself out. I'm gonna go ahead and lower my tranny jack here a little bit, get this out of our way, and then we're gonna reinstall everything else that we took off. So first thing we're gonna reinstall is our front cross member here. You guys remember this goes here in the center and bolts up onto our frame on both sides. I'm just gonna run this center bolt here just to get that started, and then I gotta get the hardware here from my bench. What I'm gonna do is go ahead and get this installed. It's really pretty self-explanatory, you guys. The way it came off is the way it goes on. 3 mounting bolts go into this, basically 1 on each side, and the 1 in the center that you guys see before you right there. I'm gonna go ahead and hand start all of my bolts. And I gotta get my bolt for my driver's side. I'm gonna go ahead and zip this up, so I'll be right back with you guys. Now that our front bar, which is right here, is installed and it's nice and sturdy, what I'm gonna do is go ahead and do our transfer case cover that we took off. Now, if you guys recall, we didn't take this off all the way. We just merely loosened it and pushed it off to the side. I try to do this with a lot of things. Instead of removing this big heavy bracket up here with this brace, just kind of push it out of the way, makes life easy, and it's out of your way. So work smarter, not harder. We're gonna go ahead and hand start all of our threads, and we're just gonna go ahead and gun these on. And just like that, all of our covers are back in place. Now, one thing that a lot of you may miss here, and you might think your job is done and you're ready to refill your trans, but not quite, guys. This did have a leak. So whether you're doing this on your own car or a customer car or whatever, you know, any car really, it's a really smart thing after you're done with it. Instead of wasting a bunch of brake cleaner, spraying this down, trying to clean it up, because I know brake cleaner can get expensive, just take something like a rag, spray some brake cleaner on it, or a microfiber towel like I have right here. At least I believe this one was microfiber when it started, before I got my hands on it. And just go ahead and wipe up your areas. You can see here, I'm not using any chemicals. This is just an oil rag that I've been using throughout this job. And you know, you can see, makes quite a big of a difference. Just take the time. I've actually been talking to you guys now for about maybe a minute since I started putting this stuff back together, and I'm pretty much done. Everything is wiped off. It's nice and clean. Now, any oil film slickness that is remaining on here, the rain and the snow will take care of. Eventually it'll wash it out and dry it off. But we are all set down here, guys. We are done with the service. So let's go ahead and move on top. All right, guys, actually I made a mistake here. I thought we were done, but we actually are not. There's one thing that I forgot to install. Now, a lot of you may say, hey, what is it? Or, you know, why would you refilm yourself screwing up? Well, it happens, guys. I'm human. I double checked everything, and I noticed that our little cover here, the one with the 10mm for the plug, didn't put it back, meaning I didn't tighten it up on our bracket. So all we're gonna do is take our 10mm bolt here, and I'm gonna try to be careful here because I don't want to touch the trans pan because it is freshly painted. These can be a little bit of a fight to get back in because it's not really a machine surface. It's more of like a metal bolt that you got to push in there. So I'm going to go ahead and put our cover in. Now, I did kind of touch our trans pan there. I don't want to leave a fingerprint on it, so what I'm going to do is get our undercoating spray here, and let's give it just a little bit of a blend job there, just to play it safe, so that way it looks nice and even. I know it probably doesn't matter because it's underneath the car, and realistically this undercoating may flake off in a year or two, but still, guys, take pride in your job, do it right. I'm actually going to be painting his oil pan here as well. If you guys see, this one's looking pretty crusty. I got the go ahead from him to go ahead and lay some paint on that. However, I'm not going to be covering that in this video, but you know, just give you guys a heads up. If you have an oil pan that's exposed like this and you see it's rotting up, take the time, buy some undercoating spray it. It won't make it last forever, but it'll definitely help prolong it a little bit, buy you some time. So now that our final bolt is installed up there for our cover, we are all set, and it's time to refill this transmission. Now it's time to fill up our transmission. What we're going to want to do is go ahead and pull off your transmission dipstick. Now, in essence, I should have probably pulled this off earlier when I was going to remove the pan. It would have helped relieve some pressure so the oil wouldn't have splattered anywhere. But to be honest with you, the oil didn't splatter anywhere. So They didn't really need to because it didn't have a drain plug like the new pan does. What I'm gonna do is go ahead and put my trans funnel in there. I like using this shorty one, works out pretty good. Now per Mitchell guys, it says that this transmission, if you're rebuilding it, takes about 8 quarts. And if you're just doing a service on it, it says it takes about 5. So what we're going to do is start off by adding about 4.5 to 5 quarts of the fluid. Now this specific oil in this car is ATF plus 4, which is what Chrysler uses. Now customer didn't want to go with the Mopar ATF plus 4 because it can be a little pricey. So we're using an ATF plus 4 equivalency here. It's basically just the aftermarket manufacturer that makes ATF plus 4, and I'm pretty sure it's the same stuff that's in the Chrysler bottle, seeing as how it's all made domestically or wherever it's made. There's only so many oil manufacturers, and usually what they do, guys, what I find is they'll just switch the name on the bottle, and it's basically the same thing. You'll just wind up paying more for a Chrysler branded bottle than you would be for a, let's say, parts store branded bottle. But either way, we're gonna go ahead and fill this up, and I'll be right back with you guys. So I got all of my oil in here. I re-looked at the specs, guys, and I did see that it said 5.3, so I went ahead and I put 5 quarts in there instead of 4, just according to what service fill data said. I was looking at the wrong data sheet there, because previously I think I said I was gonna put the 4 in there. So we went ahead and we put 5 quarts. Now the bleeding procedure, or I'm sorry, not bleeding procedure, but the checking procedure on this is you're gonna have to warm up the transmission and get it hot enough to be able to check it. Now, if I'm not mistaken, you gotta check it when it is at 180 degrees Fahrenheit, when it's hot. And then it says on the dipstick here, from what I read, you can add oil to it when it's 80 degrees Fahrenheit, meaning it's cold if it's on the lower hole area. Now, just to test the theory here, because the service data said about 5 quarts when you're service filling it, and ours did drain for a little bit, so I'm just going to dip my dipstick in here. Now, this may be a little bit inaccurate because I just finished filling it up from here, so I may get a wrong result. And yep, just as I thought, it's given me an unclear result. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to give this car some time to warm up the transmission, and that'll give it enough time for that oil to run all the way down to the bottom of the dipstick tube. Because right now my dipstick, guys, if you guys are looking at it, my level reading should be here. I'm getting the readings all the way up to here because we filled it through the same tube where we check it, and until that oil runs all the way down, it's going to throw off your readings. So we're going to give that a little bit of time, which is fine, and then we're going to go ahead and run the car, get it warmed up to 180 degrees Fahrenheit, and then we're going to be able to check our proper hot fill level. Now, the thing about this, if you do not have a scanner, you're not going to be able to check it out, guys. So you definitely need to get a hold of some sort of scanner that's capable of reading transmission temperature at this point. So we've had our truck running for a little bit, guys. We finally reached our operating temperature. Just to give you guys an idea here, put you down on the bench. So the spec to test this transmission fluid is 180 degrees Fahrenheit. Now, some time has elapsed. I've, did the check at 180. Our transmission is full, but I just wanted to show you guys that you do need a scanner or something that's capable of reading transmission temperature. We have 2 different temperatures here. One is in reverse or drive only, where it reads it when it's actually going through the transmission, through the clutch packs. And the other one is just overall fluid temperature. But you guys will see they're pretty much right on point. They're both pegged at 195 right now, which is a good thing. It means they're both reading the same exact thing, so the fluid is uniform when it comes to the temperature. That's why I use these 2 graphs, just to make sure it's uniform. Now, when we head out to the truck, what we did here was we went ahead and we inserted our dipstick in our dipstick tube. Now, currently it's not inserted. I actually have it here off to the side, and we basically measured our transmission fluid. Now, for those of you that aren't familiar with this, now every car is going to be different, especially these Jeeps, depending on the transmission. Let me get some lighting in here for you guys. See if I can get a nice bright light. But what you want to do is basically have it in between these 2 high marks. That would be your indication for full. when your transmission is up to 180 degrees Fahrenheit. You can see here, and I don't know how well the camera will pick it up, but it says cold fill. Even though you can check it on a cold fill, the hot fill is actually the best way to check it, because it's going to be the optimum temperature when the transmission is running. And I feel more comfortable knowing it's full when it's hot and running completely than not knowing. That's just how I am. One more quick tip: a lot of these dipsticks will tell you on here how to read the level. Now, I don't know how well the camera's gonna pick it up. It's very small writing, guys, but typically read your dipstick. It'll give you some good advice as far as what you need to do to check your transmission fluid. Now, in this particular case, this one says upper holes for hot oil, 180 degrees Fahrenheit. Use Mopar ATF +4. And it says idle and neutral when checking. So pretty standard procedure stuff here. That's how we're checking it here too, guys. The truck has been running, it's in neutral, it's supported on the lift. You guys can see right here, so that way it doesn't roll away on me or anything. And it's been running in here for, I want to say, about 15 minutes or so. These transits get up to temperature pretty quickly. So all I have to do right now is go ahead and insert the dipstick and go ahead and close off my hood, and she is all set and done. So that concludes our video on our transmission oil pan replacement and transmission service on this Jeep, guys. As you guys saw, the road to get here wasn't as easy. We did fight a couple battles, but that's just how it works out sometimes in automotive. It's not as cut and dry and easy as peasy, as they say. But in this scenario, it wasn't too bad. Even though we had encountered those issues, they were able to come off with minimal I guess you can say effort, if that, because it didn't take too much. But I'm glad everything worked out, and I'm actually kind of happy that happened, because it kind of shows you guys, if you run into the same issue, how to handle it. It's actually a good thing when it winds up happening the way it did, because you guys get to learn more and I get to get more in depth in the video. So hopefully that portion of it will help you guys out if you run into this issue on your own. It's quick, simple, and easy, guys, especially when the job goes pretty straightforward like it should. And even if it doesn't, either way, you just roll through it. Nothing you can do. You just, take the punches and roll on through. So hopefully this video helps you guys out if you guys are doing this job or something similar. Now, this transmission is also in a lot of Mercedes, guys. It's not just limited to this Jeep. So if you have a NAG 1 transmission, basically it's the same thing in Mercedes and Jeep. So you can follow the same guidelines as this video. Same exact thing, just different application. So please comment, like, and subscribe, guys. It definitely helps the channel grow. Hope you guys have a wonderful day, and I'll catch you guys on the next video.